Best late entry of the century. Braga! Huh. Yo! I'm not going to smoke.
Down. Hiccup whispered and they ducked, avoiding the dragons flying above them. Where in the world are we going? Astrid asked. I don't know. Toothless. Wherever you and Midnight are taking us, you guys need to turn back, bud. Hiccup pleaded, not liking where this is going. Midnight, come on. Both of you take us back. Hiccup whispered, pulling on Midnight's saddle. The two dragons, however, ignored him and continued on their path. It looks like they're hauling in their kill. Hiccup noted as he saw the other dragons fly by. This does not make me feel better. Astrid asked nervously. Don't worry. We'll be fine. Toothless and Midnight will not let that happen to us. Hiccup said confidently. They reached an island with a huge mountain in the center. They followed the other dragons towards a passageway. After seeing millions of dragons gather there, it then dawned on the three of them where they were. Is this what I think it is? Hiccup asked, her eyes wide. It definitely is. What Dad wouldn't give to find this? Hiccup commented in disbelief. Toothless and Midnight quickly took the teens on a ledge where they then watched as the other dragons started dropping their food in a seemingly empty pit. It is so good to see all our hard-earned food has been stolen just to be dumped down a hole. Hiccup said sarcastically. None of them are eating any of it. Astrid noted. That doesn't make any sense. Why would they go through all that trouble and bloodshed to steal food from our village if they are just going to throw it down a hole? Hiccup asked, trying to figure out an explanation. They continued to watch as a gronkle suddenly came near the pit, only to regurgitate a tiny fish. A loud roar suddenly shook the mountain as the gronkle was eaten by a large head that appeared from below. The three teens froze in shock and fear. They have never even heard of anything like that. That's why dragons have been raiding them all this time. For them it's actually kill or be killed. What is that thing? Astrid whispered. To say she was terrified now was an understatement. That's a monster. We have to leave, right now. Come on, Midnight. Hiccup urged. Alright, buddy, we need to fly out of here. Now. Hiccup told his dragon. But it was too late as the monster saw the teens and the dragons and went to eat them. Luckily Toothless and Midnight flew out of there just in time, flying through the opening above. The monster nearly got Midnight by the tailfin, if it hadn't been for an unfortunate zippleback that flew in its path. The zippleback was then dragged to the ground where it disappeared, much to Hiccup's horror as she looked back. This explains everything. It's like a giant beehive. The dragons are the workers, and whatever that thing is their queen. It forces them to steal food. Astrid said, putting two and two together. As soon as they landed back in the cove, Astrid jumped off Toothless and started running towards the village. Come on, guys. Let's find your dad. Astrid called out. No. Hiccup and Hiccup shouted. No. Not yet. They'll kill Toothless and Midnight. Astrid, we need a plan on how to tell them. Hiccup explained. Hiccup's right. As soon as they find out we befriended Night Furies, they're not going to listen to anything else. Hiccup added. Hiccup, we just discovered the dragon's nest. The thing we have been searching for years ever since Vikings first sailed here. And you two want to keep it to yourselves. To protect your pet dragons. Are you guys serious? Astrid asked in disbelief. The twins looked her in the eyes and answered in a firm voice, yes. This caught Astrid completely off guard. She was not expecting this at all. Here were the two runts of the village, both strongly standing up to her to protect the ones they care about. They didn't even stutter or hesitate. She could see the determination in both of them. She couldn't help but feel proud of them. Looks like befriending dragons has helped them a lot. Alright then, what's the next step? She asked. Hiccup turned to her brother, hoping he would have an answer. Thinking about it, Hiccup spoke up. Just give us until tomorrow. We'll figure something out. He said. Okay. Astrid then punched him on his shoulder. That's for kidnapping me. Rubbing his shoulder, Hiccup turned to Toothless who was drinking water by the pond with his mate. Now that the dragons know that Astrid is not a threat, Hiccup is on his own. Then, to Hiccup's surprise, Astrid gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. That's for everything else. She said shyly before running off. Dazed by the kiss, Hiccup turned to see that Toothless and Midnight came over to him and were now staring at him. What are you two looking at? He stuttered. He then noticed his sister has gone quiet. Hiccup, are you okay? He asked. Midnight crooned at her rider, also concerned. Hiccup turned to her brother. Midnight and I nearly got eaten by that monster, Hiccup. I mean if that zippleback didn't fly in its path then. She shuddered at the thought. Hiccup then went to comfort her. Hey sis, don't worry. You're both safe now. We won't be going back there anytime soon. Okay. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Hiccup managed a smile. Okay. She then remembered something. We've been making outfits, bro. Seriously. Hiccup looked sheepish. Hey, I panicked. Okay. You know how intimidating she can get. This is why I'm a better liar than you. Oh, really? Then why didn't you come up with a better lie when we needed it? Chapter 16. The truth is out. The day Hiccup and Astrid dreaded came. It was the day of Hiccup's final exam where he will have to kill a dragon in front of the entire village. Everyone was gathered at the arena, cheering and shouting Hiccup's name as Stoik gave his speech. Well, I can show my face in public again. If someone had told me that in just few short weeks, Hiccup and Hiccup would go from being, well, as they are, to the top 2 students in dragon training. Well, I would have tied him to a mast and shipped him off for fear he had lost his mind. Yes. And you know it. But here we are. And no one's more surprised or more proud than I am. Today, Hiccup becomes a Viking. Today, he becomes one of us. He yelled in joy as the crowd continued to cheer. Inside the arena near the gate, Hiccup and Hiccup were listening to the speech, the latter growing more and more nervous as he heard the speech. How is their dad going to feel when he finds out the truth? Sensing her brother's distress, Hiccup turned to him. It's going to be okay, Hiccup. Dad always tells us that sometimes a chief needs to make hard choices that people may not agree on based on what he believes in. Try not to aggravate the dragon. Astrid advised Hiccup as she came from behind, holding her axe. The dragon's not really my main concern right now. Hiccup said, watching Stoik take his seat. Please tell me you have some kind of plan. Astrid pleaded. We did make a plan. Hiccup said. It's not 100% guaranteed to work, but it's the only option right now. Hiccup said sadly. Hiccup, Astrid, I need you both to promise that if something does go wrong in the arena, then make sure no one finds Toothless and Midnight. Hiccup requested. Of course Hiccup. Hiccup promised. We will, and we need you to promise us that nothing will go wrong in the arena. Astrid said. Hiccup didn't reply as Gobber came and started walking Hiccup inside the arena. It's time, Hiccup. Knock him dead. Gobber then went to join Stoik in the stands. Just before the gate shut, Astrid used the tip of the blade of her axe as a wedge between the gate and the floor. Just in case. Astrid told Hiccup, noticing her questioning glance. As Hiccup entered, the Vikings cheered even louder. Show him how it's done, my man. Toughnut yelled. You can do this, Hiccup. Come on. Rada cheered. Hiccup walked towards the weapon rack and picked a shield and a dagger. Herf. If that was me, I would have chosen the hammer or the axe. Stoik said to Gobber. Hiccup then stood at the center of the arena and called out, I'm ready. The gates opened and out came a terrifying monstrous nightmare who immediately coated itself with flames and roared as it left its cage. The dragon then climbed out from the ceiling, shooting fire at the other Vikings who managed to dodge them. It then set its sights on Hiccup. It dropped down from the ceiling and inched closer and closer to Hiccup. Hiccup took a deep breath. It was now or never. He then threw away his shield and his dagger, much to the confusion of everyone except for Hiccup and Astrid. What is he doing? Stoik mumbled. It's okay. It's okay. Hiccup said, trying to calm down the monstrous nightmare. He then took off his helmet and threw it away as well. I'm not one of them. This caused the villagers, except for Astrid and Hiccup, to gasp in shock. How could he say that? Stop the fight. Stoik said, not believing what he was seeing. No. All of you need to see this. Dragons are not the monsters we think they are. We can live in peace with them, Hiccup said, reaching his hand towards the dragon. Hiccup held her breath. This is it. All he had to do now was show everyone that the monstrous nightmare can be tamed. I said stop the fight. Stoik yelled enraged. He banged his hammer against the rails and just like that, all hope Hiccup had to tame the monstrous nightmare had vanished as the dragon started panicking. It went on a rampage, targeting Hiccup. Hiccup screamed and started running for his life, trying desperately to avoid getting burned by the dragon. Back at the cove, Toothless and Midnight's ears perked up at the sound of Hiccup's voice. Hiccup is in danger. Midnight already flew out of the cove. If Hiccup is in danger, then his sister might also be. Toothless climbed out of the cove, sinking his claws deep in the slopes so he won't fall. He finally made it out of the cove and joined his mate as they both headed towards the village as fast as they could. They have to save their humans. Hurry, Astrid. We need to get in there. Hiccup exclaimed as Astrid used her axe to open the gate to create enough space for her and Hiccup to slide under. They got in and Hiccup ran to her brother to help him while Astrid grabbed a hammer from the weapons rack and threw it to the dragon, causing it to chase her instead. Stoik made his way towards the entrance and opened the gate, allowing the teens to escape. This way, he shouted. Astrid managed to get out just in time, but Hiccup weren't so lucky as the monstrous nightmare fired near the entrance, preventing either of them from escaping. The dragon then pounced on them, trapping them with its claws. Before it could blast either of them though, two roars filled the arena as the villagers looked towards the source. Night Fury. Gobber yelled. Toothless and Midnight flew into the arena, ignoring the shouts from the other Vikings and attacked the dragon that dared to harm Hiccup and Hiccup. They were successful as they got the dragon away from the twins and made it retreat back into the cage. But then there was another problem, the Vikings. Hiccup got up and ran to their dragons. Alright, Toothless, you and Midnight go. Get out of here. He begged, trying to push Toothless to go. Midnight, please. You guys need to get out of here or you're both going to get captured. Hiccup pleaded. But the two dragons adamantly refused. They couldn't leave their humans behind when there was more danger around them. Many Vikings charged in the arena and tried to attack the Night Furies, but Midnight and Toothless fought back. Stoik then charged in the arena towards the dragons. Stoik, no! Astrid shouted. But it was no use. The chief had his mind set on capturing those dragons at all costs. No, wait. You don't understand. Hiccup cried. Dad, he won't hurt you. Hiccup shouted. But it was too late. Toothless ran towards him and attacked while Hiccup managed to hold Midnight back. After a brief struggle, Toothless had Stoik pinned to the ground, and to the twins' horror, was preparing to fire a plasma blast. Toothless. Stop. Don't Toothless, please. No. The Haddock twins yelled. That stopped Toothless as his pupils dilated. He looked up to the twins in confusion, when he suddenly got tackled by the other Vikings. Midnight gave a roar and rushed to help him, but she too got tackled and muzzled. Hiccup and Hiccup tried to get to their dragons but Astrid held them back, knowing it's only going to make things worse. Stoik got up and saw the two dragons being tied by the Vikings while his two children were trying to help their enemies. Put it with the others. He commanded. From the stands, Rada was speechless along with the other teens. She was not expecting any of this to happen at all. Is that the same Night Fury they shot down with another one? Is this how they've been getting better in training? Why didn't they tell me? Rada knew her best friends better than that. She thought carefully about what would have happened if they did tell her. Would she have accepted it? After what happened to her family? Taking a closer look at the two Night Furies as they were being pulled away, she became confused. Are those saddles an prosthetic tailfin? She then looked back at her two friends and saw how worried they were for the dragons. Her mind then went back to what Hiccup was trying to show them all before the chaos started. Chapter 17. No longer Vikings. The doors to the Great Hall opened and Hiccup were shoved inside. I should have known something would be up. Stoik ranted, angered by what he saw. Dad, you don't understand, Hiccup tried to explain. We had a deal. I know we did. But then things got complicated. Hiccup said. We really didn't want things to end up like this. Hiccup tried. So everything you two did in the ring. A complete lie. Stoik demanded. It was just new things we've learned. We didn't want to cheat our way to the top, we just wanted to get by dragon training. Hiccup explained. And we screwed up. We should have never kept this facade up for so long. That was our mistake. Take this out on us, be mad at us, but please, just don't hurt Toothless and Midnight. Hiccup pleaded. Yes, just spare them. It wasn't their fault. They saved us. Hiccup agreed. Those dragon. Stoik shouted in disbelief. That's what you're both worried about. Not the people you two almost killed. They attacked because they saw you guys as threats. Hiccup countered. Hiccup's right. They were just protecting us. They didn't mean any harm. Hiccup agreed. They've killed hundreds of us. Stoik shouted, outraged. And we've killed thousands of them. They are being held against their will. They have no choice but to raid our village for food. Hiccup's right. They defend themselves, that's all. They raid us because they have to. If they don't bring enough food back, they'll be eaten themselves. There's something else on their island. Dad, it's a dragon-like. More like a monster. Their island? Stoic asked, causing the twins to freeze. You two have been to the nest. Did I say nest? Hiccup asked nervously. Vikings have spent 300 years trying to find it. How did you two find it? Stoic demanded. No. We didn't. Toothless and Midnight did. Only a dragon can find the island. Hiccup answered without thinking. Yeah, it's some kind of hypnotic sound or something that pulls them towards the island. Oh, no. Hiccup said, putting her hands to her mouth as she and her brother saw the look in their father's eyes. They knew what he was planning to do. Oh, no, no. Dad, no. Dad. Please don't even think about it. Hiccup said desperately as Stoic moved towards the door. Dad, please. We saw this thing ourselves. It will destroy you and the other warriors in one blast. Hiccup warned, getting in front of her father to try and stop him. Hiccup's right. It's like nothing you've ever seen. Dad, please. Hiccup, and I promise you that you can't win this one. No. Dad, no. For once in your life, would you please just listen to us? Hiccup shouted, grabbing onto his father's arm. Stoic shook him off, throwing him back. Hiccup went to her brother to see if he was okay. You two have willingly thrown yourselves in their ranks. Stoic said in an iced voice, causing them to stop and look at him. You're not Vikings. You're not my children. He slammed the door behind them, leaving the twins speechless as their hearts stopped. What have they done? They have already lost their mother when they were babies and now they've lost their dad. Neither of them knew what to do now. What could they do? Outside the Great Hall, Stoic stopped and let everything sink in as he realized what he just did. However, he shook it off and walked forward. Ready the ships, he shouted. They have a battle to prepare for. Chapter 18. New Plan. At the docks, all the warriors gathered every weapon they have and threw them on the ships. Those who were too young or too old stayed behind. Toothless and Midnight were bound to chains, unable to break free, and were pulled onto one of the ships. Hiccup and Hiccup could only helplessly watch from afar at the preparations. They couldn't do anything now. They have already done enough. Set sail. We head for Helheim's gate. Stoic ordered. He looked up and saw Hiccup and Hiccup looking at him, their faces were expressionless. There was a small part of him that said to go them and fix their broken relationship, but he shook it off and walked towards the front of the ship. Hiccup even said it himself, he wasn't one of them and neither was Hiccup. He stopped where Midnight and Toothless were and leaned towards them. Lead us home, devils. He said in a low voice, glaring at them, which they returned. The Haddock twins watched as the ships disappeared, desperately wanting to stop them but couldn't. They knew they would only make it worse. They stayed there even after the ships were long gone and Astrid joined them. Wow, this whole thing turned into a disaster. You two must feel horrible. Both of you have lost everything. Your father, your tribe, your best dragon friends. Astrid stated. That barely helped, thank you for summing that up. Hiccup deadpanned. Yeah, we really appreciate that. Hiccup muttered sarcastically. This was not what either of them needed to hear at all. Why couldn't I have killed that dragon when I got the chance? It would have been better for everyone. Hiccup said sadly, remembering that day in the forest. This was all his fault. He started this whole thing because of his false desire to kill a dragon, and he dragged his sister and now Astrid into this mess. He was even the one who blurted out their discovery of the nest, causing this suicide mission to happen. It would have made our lives a whole lot better than this. Hiccup agreed. Astrid then spoke up. That's right. Any Viking in this village would have done it without a second thought, even me. So why didn't you? She asked Hiccup. She then turned to Hiccup. What about you, Hiccup? When your brother couldn't have killed him, why didn't you? Hiccup took a deep breath and answered, because I knew it wasn't who I am. I don't want to be a dragon slayer, I actually want to be a. She took another deep breath, a healer. And seeing Toothless in the forest that day confirmed that. Astrid raised her eyebrows in surprise, a healer. Yeah, I have that passion ever since I was 11. I wanted to save lives, not take them away. Now, it looks like any little hope for that ever becoming a reality is gone. Hiccup admitted, looking out towards the ocean. Not wanting to push the subject further, Astrid turned to Hiccup, and what about you? Why didn't you? I don't know. I don't have the passion of being a healer. I just couldn't. Hiccup said, not looking at her. That does not explain anything. Astrid stated. Hiccup started getting annoyed. Why do you care about this so much? Because I want to remember what you say, right now. Astrid answered calmly. Oh, for the love of I was a coward. I was weak. I wouldn't kill a dragon. You said, wouldn't, that time. Astrid pointed out. Whatever. Wouldn't, couldn't, it's the same thing. 300 years, and I'm the first Viking who wouldn't kill a dragon. Hiccup ranted, turning his back to the girls. He just felt hopeless now. Not the first, bro. Hiccup reminded him. She knew she wouldn't kill dragons long before she and her brother met Toothless and Midnight. You two were the first to ride ones, though. That brought the twins out of their depressions as they remembered all the discoveries they made in the past month and the fact that they managed to restore a dragon's flight. They wouldn't have achieved those things if they weren't so different from everyone. So. I wouldn't kill him because he looked as frightened as I was. I looked at him, and I saw myself. Hiccup answered, looking at Astrid. The three of them then stared out at the direction that the ships went. I bet he and Midnight are really frightened now. Are you guys going to stand there and mope or are you going to do something about it? Astrid asked. Hiccup shrugged. We could do something about it, but it would probably be something stupid. Wouldn't be our first time. Hiccup commented. Good. But you've already done that. Astrid said. An idea then came to the twins' mind. One glance exchanged, they knew they had the same plan in mind. Then something crazy. Hiccup said. We need to get to the arena. Hiccup said and the twins ran off. That's more like it. Astrid said watching the two run off. There were the Haddock twins she knew and loved. She then went to join them. Sound your positions. Stay within earshot. Stoic ordered. Here. 1 length to your stern. On your starboard flank. 3 widths to port. Ahead, at your bow. Haven't a clue. Gobber then approached Stoic nervously. Listen. Stoic. I was overhearing some of the men just now and, well, some of them are wondering what it is we're up to here, not me of course. I know you're always the man with the plan, but some, not me, are wondering if there is in fact a plan at all, what it might be. Find the nest and kill every dragon. Stoic said with a cold expression. He was determined to get rid of every last one of them. To make them pay for brainwashing Hiccup and Hiccup to take their side. They have taken away his wife and turned his children against him and now he will get his revenge. Ah. Of course. Short and simple. The old Viking fallback. Gobber muttered, not feeling reassured at all. Movements from Toothless and Midnight caught Stoic's attention. Shish. He observed the 2 dragons for a second before moving to the back of the ship. He grabbed the rudder and observed the 2 Night Furies. Toothless and Midnight, on instinct, turned their heads left, making Stoic steer the boat left as well. He started following directions based on where the dragons turned their heads to get to the nest. Bear to port. One of the Vikings called out. Back in the arena on Burke, Hiccup and Hiccup were about to open one of the cages when a familiar voice made them turn around. If you two are planning on getting eaten, you should choose the Gronkle. Fishlegs advised. In front of the Haddock twins was not only Astrid but also Fishlegs, Rada, Snotlout, Roughnut and Toughnut. Rada walked towards the two and they were suddenly feeling nervous. She now knows the truth, what is she going to say to them? Night Furies. You guys befriended Night Furies. Unbelievable. She said. Look, Ray. We're so sorry. We really didn't want to lie to you and it wasn't easy for us to do so. We just. Hiccup tried to explain but was then cut off by Rada. Those were 2 of the most feared and deadly dragons known to Vikings. They could have been anywhere they wanted to be, yet they willingly chose to come to a place filled with armed Vikings, just to protect you two. One of them even had the perfect chance to kill the chief. But it didn't because you guys told him not to. Rada commented thoughtfully. The Haddock twins were surprised by her reaction. This was definitely not what they were expecting. Wait, so you're not mad at us? Hiccup asked unsure. Well, to be honest I'm more shocked than mad but as far as I know, those 2 dragons saved your lives and we need to return the favor. Astrid said you guys have a plan and we're in. Rada said, referring to herself and the other teens. Hiccup and Hiccup smiled in relief. They still have their best human friend. Toughnut then decided to cut in. You two were wise to seek help from the world's most deadly weapon. He said, pushing Rada aside. Noticing the Haddock twins' confused expressions he then added, it's me. I love this plan. Snotlout said enthusiastically, pushing Toughnut aside. The twins didn't even say what the plan was. We didn't. Hiccup started to say before Roughnut cut in. You two are crazy. She then leaned towards Hiccup and whispered. I like that a lot. much to the poor boy's discomfort. To his relief, Astrid pulled Roughnut aside by her helmet. So, what is the plan? She asked. Knowing you two, it's going to be something epic. Rada said, smiling. Chapter 19. The Final Battle Part 1. Back to the Viking warriors, the ships were getting closer and closer to the nest as it passed a wrecked ship. Ah. So that's where that ship went. Mystery solved. Gobber commented. Stay low and ready your weapons. Stoik ordered, as they nearly reached the island. Once they got there, the chief was the first to jump off and survey the land. We're here. At the arena the teens, besides Astrid and Hiccup, watched in awe as Hiccup guided the now calm monstrous nightmare out of its cage with his hand near the dragon's snout. Snotlout, however, was feeling a bit uneasy as he slowly began to pick up a broken spear from the ground. Luckily, Astrid caught him in time. She said, hitting him on the shoulder. Reluctantly, he dropped it. Hiccup then brought the dragon closer to Snotlout and took the Jorgensen boy's hand. Snotlout started to panic. Wait, what are you? Relax. Just calm down. Hiccup said, taking his cousin's hand again. Don't panic, Snotlout. You show the dragon you trust it, it will trust you in return. Hiccup advised. Hiccup slowly moved Snotlout's hand towards the snout of the dragon, causing it to purr and content much to Snotlout's amazement and relief. However, he started to get worried again when Hiccup moved away from him. Where are you going? You guys will need something to hold on to while riding dragons. Hiccup said, holding up some rope. Trust us. This is from experience. Hiccup added. The teens turned around and saw that the haddock girl had opened the rest of the cages that contained the two deadly natters, the Gronkle and the hideous Zippleback. When we crack this mountain open, all hell is going to break loose. Stoik said as they devised a strategy. And my undies. I knew it was a good thing I always pack extras. Gobber said. Stoik ignored that and continued, this war will end today no matter what. Stoik then raised his right arm and gave the signal. At that signal, the Vikings used one of the catapults to launch a boulder at the mountains, creating an entrance. Stoik then approached the entrance, while the others stayed in their positions. The Vikings then fired a flaming boulder into the entrance, revealing thousands of dragons hidden in the cave. Stoik gave a battle roar and charged into the mountains. The dragons, seeing the newly formed opening, immediately flew out. The warriors raised their weapons high and prepared to fight. But to their surprise, none of the dragons fought back. All the dragons just flew past them and away from the island. That's it. Gobber wondered. He then shrugged and turned to the other warriors. We've done it. Spitelout yelled. The other warriors cheered. They were victorious. Stoik, however, felt a little unsettled. That was too easy. These dragons raided their village every night and were relentless in getting their prey. Yet when the Vikings came to their home, the dragons flee without a fight. Stoik then looked at where Toothless and Midnight were and saw that they were backing away in fear. Seeing that, Stoik knew something was wrong. It's not over yet. Form your ranks. Hold together. The other warriors stopped their celebration and went back to their positions. Suddenly, a thunderous roar was heard, alarming the warriors as they never heard anything like it. Move away, fast. Stoik yelled as he moved away from the entrance. The entrance of the mountain started to break further apart as the same gigantic dragon that Hiccup, and Astrid have seen came out and into view. Beard of Thor, what is that? Gobber shouted, looking at the size of the dragon. Odin, help us. Stoik muttered. Catapults. He then shouted, hoping it will have some effect. But that hope was lost when the boulders launched didn't even scratch the enormous dragon. The dragon blasted fire at the catapults in retaliation. Retreat. Retreat. One of the Vikings shouted. But Stoik knew that it wasn't a good idea. No. No. He was right as the dragon then blasted at the ships, preventing anyone from leaving the island. Hey. That was clever. Gobber commented. I was a fool. Stoik said, looking down. His mind went back on what Hiccup and Hiccup were trying to tell him. Of course, they were talking about this dragon. They've been here, they obviously saw that thing. They were trying to warn him even after everything he put them through. He led his warriors to a suicide mission and now they were all going to die. Guilt and shame overtook him. He needed to do something. He turned to Spitelout, lead the men to the far side of the island. Spitelout nodded, right. Everybody to the far side of the island. Gobber, go with the men. Stoik ordered. Yeah, I know that look, Stoik. I'm going to stay here. Gobber said, knowing his friend. Stoic turned to Gobber. I can buy the others more time to get to safety if I give that beast someone to hunt. Before Stoic could run off, Gobber grabbed his hand. Then I can double that time, he said, not leaving any room for arguments. Stoic nodded in understanding and then called to the beast, here. No, here. Gobber shouted and both of them ran off towards the monster. Stoic grabbed one of the sharp wooden stakes jutting from the ground and threw it at the beast to get its attention. Come on. Bite me. Gobber shouted. No, me. Stoic yelled. Before the enormous dragon could decide which to eat first, suddenly a blast came from the left side of its head. Rough, tough, be careful. Keep up, fishlegs. A voice called out, making Stoic stop and look up. He'd recognized that voice anywhere. To his and the other warriors' complete shock, the 8 teens were flying on the 5 dragons from the arena. Hiccup, Astrid and Hiccup were ahead of the group on the blue deadly natter with Hiccup steering. Rada was right behind them on the purple deadly. Snotlout was behind Rada on the monstrous nightmare, while Fishlegs was on the Gronkle. This left the Thorsten twins on the hideous Zippleback with Roughnut on the left head and Toughnut on the right head. Look at us. We're flying on dragons. All of us. Toughnut called out to the stunned Vikings below them. Up. Let's move it. Hiccup shouted and the others followed. Those two are definitely every bit the boar-headed, stubborn Viking you ever were. Gobber commented to Stoic. Stoic only nodded, completely speechless. Even after he ignored them and disowned them, Hiccup and Hiccup were coming to his rescue. What's more shocking is that they came on the backs of Dragon with Hiccup giving out orders like a true leader should. Alright Fishlegs, give us the stats. Hiccup ordered as the 8 of them and their dragons flew in a circle. Okay. Heavily armored skull and tail made for bashing and crushing. Steer clear of both. Small eyes, large nostrils. Relies on hearing and smell. Fishlegs noted, observing the beast. Okay. Lout, legs, hang in its blind spot. Make some noise, keep it confused. Ray, find out if it has a weak spot. Rough, tough, find out if it has a shot limit. Make it mad. Hiccup ordered, to the Thorsten twins' delight. That's my specialty. Roughnut said happily. Toughnut did not agree with that. Who told you that? I'm more annoying. See. To prove his point, Toughnut dangled upside down from the Zippleback's neck making annoying sounds. You guys just do what I told you. We'll be back as soon as we can. Hiccup commanded before he steered the natter away from the group. Good luck, guys. Hiccup called out as Astrid gave them a salute. Don't worry, we got it covered. Snotlout shouted. Let's go guys. Rada yelled and the 5 teens went to their positions. Roughnut and Toughnut flew the Zippleback right in front of the monstrous dragon's large face and started shouting insults at it as they flew by. Troll. Bud Elf. Bride of Grendel. The huge dragon fired a blast at the Thorsten twins, which they managed to dodge in time. Rada guided the purple natter on the right side of the monster's neck. Okay, let's see if the weak spot is on its neck. She fired an arrow which bounced off of the dragon's skin. Nope, she said before avoiding another blast. Near the head of the dragon, Fishlegs and Snotlout were on either side of the dragon's head. Noticing the small eyes looking at him, Fishlegs started getting a little nervous. I really don't think this thing has a blind spot. Meanwhile, Hiccup and Astrid flew above the burning boat, desperately searching for Midnight and Toothless. There they are, Hiccup said, pointing to one of the boats. Hiccup steered the natter towards the boat and along with his sister, jumped off the dragon and onto the burning boat. Go help the others, Hiccup told Astrid. Be careful, Hiccup called out. Reluctantly, Astrid guided the natter away from the burning boat. Hey guys. Don't worry. We're going to get you 2 out of there, Hiccup said to the 2 night furies. Just hold on. The twins took of the muzzles and started working on prying the chains open. Back at the head of the dragon, Snotlout and Fishlegs were banging their hammers against their shields and it looked like it had the desired effects. Yeah, it's working. It's getting weaker, Fishlegs yelled. Unfortunately for Fishlegs and Snotlout, their plan worked too well that it started affecting the Gronkle and the monstrous nightmare. This caused Snotlout to be thrown of his dragon and onto the beast's head. I can't control the Gronkle anymore. Snotlout. Do something. Fishlegs yelled, throwing his hammer to Snotlout, who caught, just before he and the Gronkle fell. I'm okay. Fishlegs shouted as they hit the ground. But he spoke too soon as the Gronkle then rolled on top of him. Less okay. Fishlegs then tried get out from under his dragon and scurry away to avoid it getting stomped on by the large dragon. I can't miss. Snotlout, who was still on the dragon's head, exclaimed. He then started hitting the monster in the eyes with the hammer fishlegs threw to him. What's wrong, buddy? Is there something in your eye? Yeah. You go, Snotlout. You're the Viking. Astrid yelled as she flew by with the blue natter. That got Snotlout distracted for a second as the beast then roared and threw him in the air. He dropped his hammer, but he still managed to hang on the horns on the beast's head. Whoa. He said as he watched the hammer fall a great height towards the ground. Astrid probably shouldn't have said that. Rada muttered, making her natter fly close to the beast in case Snotlout falls off. Back on the boat, the Haddock twins were still trying to break the chains loose, but were unsuccessful. Suddenly the monster's tail smashed the boat, causing the twins and the two dragons to fall into the ocean. Since Toothless and Midnight were still chained up and unable to move, they were sinking. Hiccup and Hiccup swam towards them and desperately tried to pull on the chains, but it was no use. The twins started to lose consciousness when two hands suddenly grabbed them and pulled them out of the water. Above water, Stoik gasped for air as he pulled both of his former children back to shore. On shore, the twins regained enough consciousness to see Stoik dive back in the ocean. Dad. What? Stoik swam towards Midnight and Toothless, causing the two dragons to open their eyes to see the chief. After staring for a second, the chief broke the chains, setting the two Night Furies free. The dragons then shot out of the water, with Toothless carrying Stoik out by his claws. The dragons shook off the water and gestured to the gigantic dragon. It was clear what they were trying to say. You got it, guys. Hiccup said. Let's do this. Hiccup agreed, despite her earlier fears. They got on the saddles and were getting ready to go, when Stoik stopped both of them. Hiccup. Hiccup, I'm sorry, for everything. Yeah, so are we. Hiccup replied. We never should have lied to you. Hiccup agreed. You two don't have to go up there. Stoik said. He really didn't want them to go. He didn't want them to pay for his mistake. The twins looked at each other and smiled. We're Vikings. It's an occupational hazard. They said in unison. Recognizing his own words, Stoik held on to his children's hands and said, I'm proud to call you two my children. The twins' faces lit up from hearing this. That was all they ever wanted to hear him say, thanks, Dad. With renewed hope, they then flew high in the sky. Stoik watched them, feeling pride for his children and worried for their lives. Chapter 20. The Final Battle. They're heading towards us. Astrid shouted as soon as she saw two familiar dragons soar high in the sky. That's our cue to evacuate. Rada said, although she felt a bit uneasy about this part of the plan. Roughnut, Toughnut, get Snotlout out of there. Astrid ordered the Thorsten twins. I'm on it. They both said in unison. Then to the poor Zippelback's dismay, their riders started arguing on who would rescue Snotlout even though they were on the same dragon. I said it first. I'm going to rescue him. Toughnut said, shoving his sister. Hey. I'm driving here. Roughnut retorted, shoving back. Snotlout saw the Zippelback coming and started running towards it. He jumped and was caught in between the necks of the Zippelback. I can't believe that worked. Snotlout shouted, relieved that it did. He, Roughnut, Toughnut and Rada flew safely away from the massive dragon. Astrid, however, wasn't so lucky as the gigantic monster started sucking her and the blue natter into its mouth. It looked like it was going to be the end for Astrid and the natter when two dragons suddenly swooped in. Night Furies. A Viking shouted. Get down. Gobber yelled. Before the monster could eat Astrid and the natter, two plasma blasts came out of nowhere and hit its face. The impact of the blasts caused Astrid to fall off her dragon towards the ground. Fortunately for her, she was saved by one of the Night Furies that caught her by her foot. Did you get her? Hiccup asked Toothless. Toothless looked down at Astrid and gave her a gummy smile, which she returned. He got her, bro. Looks like we came just in time. Hiccup said as she and Midnight flew alongside them. Toothless then tossed Astrid to grab her shoulders before taking her to the ground. As soon as she was placed on the ground, she watched as the two teens and two dragons flew off to face the monster. Go. She whispered. You ready, sis? Hiccup asked her. Let's put an end to this once and for all. Hiccup answered with determination. As they flew towards the vast dragons, Hiccup noticed the wings and got an idea. That thing has wings. Okay guys, let's see if it can use them. Let's do this. Hiccup shouted. Midnight and Toothless flew towards the beast at rapid speed, firing a plasma blast each at its face. Do you think we got its attention? Hiccup asked. Does that answer your question? Hiccup replied, gesturing to the beast as it started to spread its wings and fly, chasing after them. Yep, can definitely fly. Everyone else watched in awe as the Haddock twins and the two Night Furies flew across with breakneck speed. Their awe quickly turned into worry as they watched the beast fly after them, destroying numerous sea stacks in its way. Hiccup then looked up at the clouds and got an idea. Hiccup, she called to her brother. When she got his attention, she jerked her head upwards to the clouds. Understanding what his sister was trying to tell him, Hiccup turned to Toothless. Okay, Toothless, time for us to disappear. Come on, Midnight. We need camouflage. Hiccup told her dragon. The two dragons then flew upwards towards the clouds, with the beast chasing after it. The massive dragon then shot flames at them, which they managed to avoid in time. It stopped as it realized that the two dragons and two humans were nowhere to be seen. Because of their dark scales, Toothless and Midnight easily blended in with the clouds, making it difficult for the massive dragon to find them. This gave the four of them a significant advantage as they fired plasma blast after plasma blast towards the beast's wings. Fed up, the large dragon started firing everywhere in the clouds. Midnight and Hiccup managed to avoid it, but unfortunately for Toothless and Hiccup, the former's prosthetic tailfin caught fire. Oh no! Hiccup shouted, alerting her brother to the flaming tailfin. Okay, time's up. Let's see if this works. Understanding what he meant, Hiccup guided Midnight to fly alongside Toothless as they flew downwards. Come on. Is that all you've got? We're still here. Hiccup yelled, taunting the beast. That is completely pathetic. Hiccup hollered. That did the trick as the beast started chasing them again. As they flew downwards, the twins could feel the monster getting closer and closer to them. It opened its mouth, getting ready to blast them, but the twins continued on their path. Stay with me, buddy. We're good. Just a little bit longer. Hiccup encouraged. Hang in there, Midnight. We're nearly there. Hiccup told her dragon. Hold, Midnight. Hold, Toothless. When the twins heard a hissing sound from the beast, they knew it was time. Now. In a second, Midnight and Toothless spun backwards and shot one plasma blast each into the dragon's mouth, causing it to catch fire inside its body. It tried to spread its wings, but it was no use because of the holes made from the previous plasma blasts. Toothless and Midnight flew their riders away from its mouth and upwards as the enormous dragon pummeled to its death. It hit the ground, causing a huge explosion. The monster was killed and all the dragons were finally free from its control. But it wasn't over as the Haddock twins and the Night Furies still had to get away from the inferno caused by the explosion. Hiccup and Midnight flew ahead while Hiccup and Toothless were doing their best to keep up. But that task proved to be difficult for the boys as Toothless' burnt prosthetic tail was now gone. Suddenly the beast's large, bludgeon-like tail became another obstacle for the four of them. Watch out! Hiccup screamed as she and Midnight narrowly avoided getting hit by the tail. Because the prosthetic tailfin is now gone, there was no way Hiccup and Toothless could avoid the bludgeon-like tail. No. Hiccup said fearfully as the tail came closer. No. Suddenly his vision became black as he was knocked out cold off the saddle and into the inferno. Toothless spun around and after seeing Hiccup fall into the fire, he gave a roar and used all the strength he had to dive in after him. There was no way he was going to let his rider die. Not after everything they've been through with Hiccup and Midnight. Hiccup! Hiccup cried out as she watched her brother fall, with Toothless flying after him. She urged Midnight to go after them, but the dragon adamantly refused. She knew that although it wouldn't be a problem for her because she's fireproof, her rider wasn't and she wanted to protect her from getting burned. She was as worried about Hiccup as his sister was, but she had faith that her mate will be able to rescue him in time. He has too. As soon as the smoke cleared, Stoic started looking for his children. Hiccup! Hiccup! He then saw a dark dragon landing to the ground with a human getting off the saddle. He immediately recognized the figure. Hiccup! He yelled, running to her as fast as he could. Hiccup turned around and a second later she was lifted into a hug from her father. Stoic was so grateful to see her alive and held on to her, afraid that if he let go then she would disappear. Oh, Hiccup! I'm so glad you are okay. Where's Hiccup? The question Hiccup dreaded came as she looked at the ground. Hiccup! Stoic asked fearfully, wondering why she wasn't answering. It came out of nowhere. Hiccup whispered. What? Stoic asked, confused. The tail. It was a gigantic bludgeon and it came out of nowhere. Midnight and I managed to avoid it, but Hiccup and Toothless. She couldn't finish that sentence and she didn't have to. It became clear to Stoic and the others what happened. The feeling of dread then came back to Stoic. Number. It couldn't be. Could it? They have to be around here somewhere. We have to keep looking. Stoic said, trying to hold back his tears. He kept his daughter close by as he continued to look for his son. Hiccup. Hiccup. Son. He then saw a figure lying down in the distance and his heart skipped a beat. Hiccup. Stoic whispered as he ran towards the figure with Hiccup following. As they got closer it became clear that the figure was an unconscious. Toothless. Hiccup whispered. But where was her brother? She and her dad saw that the saddle and the prosthetic tailfin were completely burnt. They both came to the same conclusion. Hiccup didn't bother hiding her tears as she started crying, turning away from Toothless. Her brother is dead. He's gone forever. She didn't know what to do anymore, she couldn't even think straight. How was she going to carry on her life without him by her side? Everything felt completely foreign to her now without him. Oh, son, I did this. Stoic whispered as he got on his knees. His heart broke as he saw Hiccup crying. He knew he was responsible for this. For once in your life, would you please just listen to us? That voice echoed in his head as he closed his eyes. Why didn't he ever listen to either of them? They were his children, he should have listened to them and instead he ignored them. He wished he could take it back now but he knew it was too late. He was grateful, thought, that at least he got a chance to make amends with Hiccup before he died. Behind Stoic and Hiccup, the other villagers bowed their heads down at the fallen hero. Those who mistreated Hiccup and his sister were consumed with guilt, wishing they could undo what they did. Astrid and Gabber pushed through the crowd but stopped when they saw the chief with his head down and Hiccup crying. Number. Astrid thought. This cannot be happening. Hiccup can't be dead. I didn't get to make amends with him properly. Why, oh why did I ever turn against those two? I never should have done that. What was I thinking? They were my friends. Her eyes started filling up with tears. Rada was also crying. That was one of her best friends. One of the first to accept the real her and understand her. Hiccup was like a brother to her and she couldn't imagine not seeing him always with his sister drawing or working on a new invention or making sarcastic comments. Toothless started coming back into consciousness and saw the mourning Vikings. Stoic decided to apologize to the dragon as well. I'm so sorry. Both of you. I'm so sorry. He whispered not only to Toothless but also to Midnight. Realizing that they were grieving over Hiccup, Toothless started to unwrap his wings which were previously wrapped firmly around him. Under his wings was Hiccup. Hiccup. Stoic shouted, causing Hiccup to turn around. Could it be? Stoic brought his son in his arms and took off his helmet to check for a heartbeat. He's alive. You saved his life, he announced. The Vikings started cheering and were joined by some of the dragons who came back. Hiccup started crying again but this time it was tears of joy. Midnight came to her mate and nuzzled him while Stoic held Hiccup's head with one hand and gently put his other hand on Toothless. Thank you, for saving my son. Stoic said. He would be forever in debt to that dragon. Gabber then approached them and took a look at Hiccup. Well, you know, most of him. Chapter 21. The Aftermath. As soon as she heard her mentor say that, Hiccup immediately got a closer look at her brother and saw what Gabber meant. His leg. Hiccup gasped. Hiccup's left leg was such a bad shape that she didn't know if she could call it a leg anymore. It was charred and bleeding and was bent at an odd angle. Gabber tried to move Hiccup away from the sight while Stoic took off his fur cape to cover the leg. We need a healer. Stoic said. No one made any movements until Gabber spoke up. Well. You guys heard the chief. We need the healer fast. The healer immediately pushed her way through the crowd and held out her hands to take Hiccup. We're going to need to set up a tent. She said. We'll work on that. Just please do what you can to save his leg. Stoic pleaded. The healer, Gabber and Hiccup had uneasy looks. They knew that the leg can't be salvaged and that there was only one thing they could do. Stoic noticed the looks. What is it? He asked. The healer seemed a bit hesitant in answering his question so Hiccup answered. The leg can't be saved, Dad. It's way beyond repair. There's no other choice but to amputate it otherwise it could get infected which will make things worse for Hiccup than it already is. Plus the amputation is the only thing that will stop him from bleeding to death, Hiccup explained. She did not want this to happen to her brother but she knew that it had to be done. This stunned Stoic and the healer. She's right. The healer said. Stoic wanted to ask Hiccup how she knew that, but then her words registered in his mind. His son was going to lose a leg. He's only 15, he's way too young for an amputation. Yet here he is, going to go through a world of pain. Stoic could never forgive himself for this. Do what you have to do. Stoic said solemnly, handing Hiccup over to the healer. She nodded and took Hiccup. Spitelaut then approached the chief. Chief. There are some Vikings who got injuries or burns from the battle and they need to be treated right away. He said. Some of the injured Vikings from the crowd nodded in agreement. Is there any other healer here? Stoic asked. Everyone shook their heads no. This put Stoic in a dilemma. There were a lot of Vikings with serious injuries and the only healer available is tending to Hiccup, preparing for an amputation. What was he going to do? I can help. A voice said, making everyone turn to the source. Hiccup came up, holding her satchel. I can help treat their wounds. She said nervously. How were they going to react? Everyone, except Gabber and Rada looked at her doubtfully. Yes, it is true they witness her and her brother took down a dragon the size of an island when no one else could, but this is different. Could they trust a 15-year-old to treat their wounds properly? Noticing the doubtful looks, Hiccup spoke up. I know all the steps in treating wounds and burns. Gothi taught them to me, I have them all memorized. And here. She took off her satchel and emptied the contents, revealing a notebook, a charcoal, a medical guidebook and a first aid kit. I came well prepared, though I know you guys have packed more medical supplies. I think you guys should give her a chance, trust me. Gabber advised. Yeah, you guys will surprise at what she can do and how much she knows. Rada added. The others still had a little bit of doubt. Stoic then spoke up, okay, since we don't have other options, I guess you will have to let Hiccup tend to your wounds. He then remembered what Hiccup had said earlier about her brother's amputation. The injured Vikings, though, still seemed a bit hesitant. Gabber then spoke up, come on. We're Vikings. We've faced through worse before and you guys are here scared of a 15-year-old treating your wounds. It's best you get them treated now as it can be worse later if left untreated. Hiccup advised. Finally, one Viking came forward holding up his singed arm. Hiccup then took the burn cream she has with her and started treating the burn. The Viking's eyes grew wide as they watched how easily and professionally she took care of the arm. As soon as she finished, she turned to the crowd. Next, she asked. Seeing how good she is, more injured Vikings stepped forward, shoving each other aside to get the treatment first. One at a time people, one at a time. Hiccup called out. She couldn't help but smile. Finally. Stoic was the most shocked and amazed at this new discovery. Who knew she was that good? Gabber noticed Stoic's expression and nudged him. Surprised huh? He said causally. Stoic turned to Gabber. How long has she been good at this? He asked. Since she was 11, I think. It's been her passion ever since. I think when you guys get back to Burke, you should have a talk with her. Gabber suggested. Stoic nodded. There were many things he needed to talk with her and Hiccup about. Remembering his son, Stoic made his way towards the healer's hut, which has been set up by the non-injured Vikings. Hiccup saw where her dad was going and called to Astrid. Hey, Astrid. Can you come here for a second? Astrid immediately walked to Hiccup. Do you mind going to the healer's hut and checking on my brother for me? Hiccup asked, while treating another warrior's wound. Astrid nodded, sure. As she left, she couldn't help but be in awe at Hiccup's skills. She did tell her she wanted to be a healer, but Astrid never knew Hiccup was this good. She must have picked up this talent after I ditched her and her brother. I wonder what else is there about her that I don't know about. She thought glumly. When she reached the tent she saw the chief with an expressionless face holding his son's hand while Toothless was at Hiccup's other side, crooning sadly at his rider. The healer noticed Astrid there and began ushering her out. You need to leave, miss. The healer said kindly. Why? What's going on? Astrid asked now concerned. We need to begin the amputation and the less people around here, the better. The healer said with sorrow. Astrid walked away trying to hold back her tears and walked back to where Hiccup was. Well? Hiccup asked as soon as she saw Astrid. Astrid tried to say something but couldn't. She didn't need to, however, as a loud and familiar scream caused everyone to jump. Noticing Astrid's expression, Hiccup knew what was going on. They're doing the amputation, aren't they? She whispered. Astrid only nodded in reply. Hiccup closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She took a moment to recollect herself before she went back to her patient's wound. 2 hours have passed since the final battle and Hiccup was finished treating every wound. She would have enjoyed that moment if she could have shared the experience with her brother. As soon as she was finished, she and Midnight went to where her brother lying down, and she hasn't left ever since. Looking out in the distance, she noticed that everyone, including her dad, was gathered around, looking like they were having a serious discussion. Curiosity getting the best of her, Hiccup got up. She turned to Toothless. "Watch after him, bud," she said. The Night Fury nodded in determination. Hiccup and Midnight then made their way towards the crowd. "Hey, what's going on?" she asked, interrupting their discussion. Stoic turned to his daughter. "We're trying to figure out a way to get back to Burke. With Hiccup's condition, it's best that we get there soon," he informed her. Hiccup said nothing and turned to stare at the ocean, to everyone's confusion. "We need rope," Hiccup muttered, making everyone more confused. "What?" Gobber asked. "There's a ship out there still standing. It looks good enough to hold a few people. If we get some rope, we can use the dragons to pull the ship with Hiccup, Dad, Gobber, Toothless and a few other Vikings back to Burke, explain the situation to everyone who stayed behind and send more ships out to get the remaining Vikings. So we're going to need rope. 6 long ropes to be exact," Hiccup said. Nobody moved as they stared at the youngest Haddock in shock. They were trying to solve this problem for an hour and she comes up, learns the problem and instantly came up with a solution. She was full of surprises. Hiccup started getting annoyed with the lack of response. "Well, what are you guys waiting for? Quit wasting time and go get the rope," Hiccup shouted, snapping them out of it. Intimidated, some of the Vikings ran off to find the ropes while the rest stayed and become more surprised at her. Even Stoic was shocked. Who knew she had such a loud, commanding voice? First Hiccup, now Hiccup. Like father, like daughter. Gobber thought. Chapter 23. Back to Burke. It took a while to get the ship back to Burke, with all the teens, except for Hiccup, still trying to get used to flying dragons. But eventually they made it back. When the villagers saw the 6 dragons, they started panicking. But luckily, Stoic was able to defuse the panic immediately and explained everything. Gobber and some of the warriors, who came with them, even backed him up. The villagers were a bit hesitant, but seeing as the chief is okay with this, they tried being open-minded about the change in the situation. More ships were sent back to the nest where the remaining Vikings were as Stoic carried Hiccup back to their home with Hiccup, Midnight, Toothless and Gobber right behind him. Stoic and Gobber moved Hiccup's bed downstairs, near the fire. Before Gobber left, Hiccup stopped him. "Gobber, do you mind doing 2 things for me?" she asked. "Of course, anything," Gobber replied. A few months ago, Hiccup made a design for a prosthetic foot to serve as an alternate for a peg leg. "Do you think you can make that?" "I'm sure that's what he would want." "Okay. And the second? Can you make the prosthetic tailfin and saddle for Toothless? You're going to have to modify the left stirrup, though. Give me the designs and I will see what I can do." "Thanks, they're in the drawer of Hiccup's work desk or room of the forge." Gobber then left and the Night Furies decided to take a nap. Stoic then took this opportunity to speak with his daughter. "So, a healer?" he asked. Hiccup took a deep breath and turned to face her father. This was it. "Yes, I've always been fascinated by it since I was 11 and I really like to help people," she replied. "Did you ever want to be a dragon slayer at all?" Hiccup took another deep breath. "No, honestly the thought of killing dragons used to bother me a lot. I never understood why until Hiccup and I met Toothless and Midnight. Why didn't you ever tell me this? I guess, I just wanted to show everyone and myself that I am capable of being a healer. I mean, as you know, Hiccup and I didn't have the best reputation around here." Guilt came back to Stoic as he realized that she was right. If a month ago, Hiccup came and announced to everyone that she wanted to be a healer and was actually good at it, they would have laughed at her and mocked her and Stoic would have just shook his head, dismissing the idea immediately. He then came in front of Hiccup, kneeled down to reach her height and took her hands in his. "I'm so sorry, Hiccup. For everything. I never should have ignored you or Hiccup like that. I never wanted to make you feel like I don't believe in you because the truth is I do. No doubt you're going to be one of the best healers on Burke. And I promise I will never turn my back on either of you. I'm so proud of both of you," he said. Hearing that, Hiccup immediately wrapped her arms around her father. "Thanks, Daddy," she whispered. He returned the hug. As soon as the rest of the Vikings came back from the nest, preparations had to be made to accommodate the dragons in the village. As chief, Stoic had to be out there guiding everyone. He was reluctant to leave his children alone in the house, especially when one of them is in a coma, but Hiccup, who has taken a vow not to leave the house until her brother wakes up, assured him that with Midnight and Toothless they will be alright. The chief then left, promising to be back in a few hours. Hiccup did a check-up on her brother to make sure that his stump was healing and that he wasn't getting a fever. She then heard the door open. That was fast, she thought. She looked up and saw it actually wasn't her father. It was Astrid. Oh, hi Astrid, Hiccup said. Hey, Astrid replied. She then walked inside. How's Hiccup? He's alright so far. His stump is healing nicely and no signs of fever. But it doesn't look like he's going to wake up for a while. She informed her. Oh, Astrid said. There was a slight pause before she continued. It was really impressive what you did back there. Treating all the wounds and taking control. You'd be a really good healer and acting chiefess. Thanks Astrid. They were both in silence as they realized that this is the first time in a long while that they were left alone talking. The final exam didn't count because they both focused on Hiccup. But now it felt kind of awkward. Astrid then decided to speak up. Hiccup, I'm really sorry. Astrid, you already apologized. No, I didn't apologize properly. I'm sorry I ditched you guys to hang out with the other teens, I'm sorry I give you guys glares and never stood up for either of you, and I'm sorry I yelled at both of you. I just wanted to be a good warrior to bring honor back to my family. What do you mean? Do you remember my Uncle Finn? Fearless Finn Hofferson. He lost the title. Do you remember the Frightmare, a terrifying dragon that comes every 10 years to Burke? Hiccup nodded. Well, when it came 10 years ago, Uncle Finn confronted it and tried to fight it. I don't know what happened to him after that, but he didn't move at all. People said he frozen in fear at the sight of the dragon. That has put my family's name to shame ever since. After that I vowed to restore, and when the time trained to become warriors, I guess I got too caught with being a good warrior that I forgot about being a good friend, and for that I'm sorry. Hiccup was quiet, letting Astrid's words set in. She did remember now what happened during the Arvindale's fire. How after that, the rumors spread about what happened to Finn Hofferson. She then spoke up. You know Astrid, after the Natter incident, I was fully prepared to ignore you for the rest of my life. I didn't think our friendship was ever going to come back. But after what you did for us, helping Hiccup in the arena and snapping us out of our depressions, I saw the same Astrid I knew and was friends with. I saw another chance. So I'm willing to forgive you and start over if you are. Astrid smiled and nodded. Deal. The door opened again, and this time it was Rada. Hey Hiccup. Oh Astrid, you're also here with Hiccup in the same room. And both of you are still alive. Knowing she was referring to their once feud, Hiccup and Astrid chuckled. Yes Ray. We're still alive. And back to being friends. The past is in the past. Hiccup said, and Astrid nodded in agreement. Well, good to hear. Anyways, did you guys hear what Snotlout and the Thorsten twins did with their dragons? You two should have been there. And just like that, the three girls spent hours talking about the day's events. Astrid then turned to comatose Hiccup. I hope he wakes up soon. Don't worry, he will. Hiccup said. I know my brother is too stubborn to die. When he wakes up, you'll be able to tell him exactly how you feel about him. What are you talking about? Astrid asked, though she had a feeling she knew. I'm talking about your newfound crush for my brother. Don't think I didn't see that kiss. Wait, Astrid kissed Hiccup? Rada asked, her eyes wide. She only kissed him on the cheek. But maybe when he wakes up Astrid can give him one on the lips. Hiccup teased, causing Astrid to blush. Better hurry Astrid. Wouldn't want someone else to get your guy, would you? Rada said, joining in the teasing. Oh, shut up. Chapter 24. A New Era. 2 weeks have passed and Hiccup was still in a coma with no signs of waking up, until today. He was started to stir, and Toothless, who noticed, went to nudge him. Oh, hey, Toothless. Hiccup muttered weakly. Toothless continued to nudge him, trying to get him to get up. The dragon grew impatient, waiting for his human to wake up from his deep sleep, and he didn't want to wait anymore. I'm happy to see you too, buddy. Then Toothless pressed his paw on Hiccup's stomach, making the latter jerk up immediately. Ow. What? Hiccup then took in his surroundings and realized where he was. I'm in my house. Then he saw Toothless and his mate right in front of him. You're both in my house. Does my dad know you two are in here? Where's Hiccup? He got the answer to the last question when he turned his head on the side and noticed his sister sleeping on a chair next to him. The two night furies started jumping around excitedly knocking things over, to Hiccup's dismay. Okay. Okay no, Toothless. Midnight. Ah, come on. The two dragons ignored him and got on the rafters above. The noise they were making woke Hiccup. Midnight, please. I know you want to go flying but, as soon as she took a glance at her brother, her eyes shot open. Hiccup. She whispered. Hey, sis. Hiccup immediately went over to him and wrapped her arms around him, hugging him as tight as she could and he returned it. After she hugged him, she slapped him on left shoulder. Ow. What was that? You idiot. You nearly gave me a heart attack. Don't ever do that again. Okay, I'll try not to. Hiccup replied sarcastically, rubbing his shoulders. He moved to get out of his bed, but stopped when he noticed that something felt different. He removed his blanket and froze in shock by what he saw. Hiccup got off his bed and watched his reaction carefully. How was he going to react? He slowly got out of bed, placing his real foot and prosthetic foot on the ground. He looked at his sister while Toothless, who came down from the rafters with his mate, started sniffing his fake leg. The leg was way beyond repair when we saw it. It couldn't be called a leg anymore. We had no choice. The healer had to amputate it. You may feel phantom pain for a while, but don't worry because you won't have to face it alone. Hiccup said solemnly, trying to shake away the memory of her brother screaming during the amputation. Hiccup sighed. I knew it was too easy getting out of there alive. Is this the same prosthetic leg I designed? Hiccup nodded. I had Gobber make it for you. It took him some time as he discovered it's not easy making a Hiccup and Hiccup invention. Hiccup then took a deep breath. Okay. He slowly stood up and tried to walk. As soon as he made the first step, he fell. Luckily, Toothless caught him and offered his head for support. Thanks, bud. Hiccup said smiling. You don't have to get up if you don't want to. Take more time to rest until you're fully ready to get up. Hiccup advised. It's okay. I'm ready. Hiccup replied. Taking another deep breath, he walked forward, still leaning onto Toothless' head. Spoiler alert, you're going to slam the door. Hiccup said. Before Hiccup could ask his sister why, he opened the door and saw a monstrous nightmare right in front of him. Just as his sister had guessed, he immediately slammed the door. There it is. Hiccup said, amused at her brother's predictable reaction while Toothless and Midnight warbled in confusion. Why weren't they going outside? Hiccup turned to his sister, asking for an explanation. Hiccup just rolled her eyes and went to open the door. Instead of another dragon raid, however, Snotlout was riding on the monstrous nightmare and was joined by the other teams and their dragons. Come on, guys, get ready. Hold on tight. Here we go. Surprised, huh? Hiccup asked, watching her brother's shocked expression. Hiccup could not believe his eyes. Dragons were everywhere in Berk. And what was more shocking was that not a single Viking was seen acting hostile towards their new guests. Is this a dream? I knew it. I'm dead. Hiccup deadpanned. Before Hiccup could answer, Stoic, who was nearby and overheard gave a chuckle. No, but you were nearly there. He said coming behind his children. So, what do you think? He asked as he put one hand on each twin's shoulder. Hiccup was absolutely speechless as they walked down the steps. I think he likes it, Dad. Hiccup said smilingly. The villagers then noticed the two teens walking down the steps. Hey, look, it's Hiccup and Hiccup. Hiccup, how you doing, mate? It's great to see you two up and about. Good to see both of you finally outside your house. Turns out all we needed was a little more of this. Stoic said, gesturing to both Hiccup and Hiccup. You just gestured to all of us. Hiccup stated. His father smiled proudly and nodded. Well, most of you, Hiccup. Gobber said, walking up to them. As you can see, I've made one of your handiworks. The design was a bit complex, though. You think it'll do? Hiccup stuck out his prosthetic foot and shrugged. I might make a few tweaks. He said, causing everyone to laugh. Wouldn't be surprised if you did. Glad to have you back, Hiccup. It's boring out here without you and your sister, Rita said, coming up to them. Thanks, Ray. Hiccup and Hiccup said, both smiling. Suddenly, he got a punch on his left shoulder again. That's for scaring me, Astrid said. Hiccup rubbed his left shoulder. Does his left shoulder have a target painted on it or something? What, is it always going to be this way? Cuz. He didn't get to finish that sentence because Astrid then gave him a kiss on the lips. Quote. I could get used to it. Hiccup said after the kiss. Lovebirds. Hiccup whispered in a sing-song voice to Rada, who grinned in response. Welcome home, Gobber said, giving Hiccup a new prosthetic tailfin and saddle for Toothless. Night Fury. Get down. That caused the teens to turn and see Toothless jumping over a few Vikings to get in front. He was joined by Midnight as the two dragons looked at their riders with pleading looks. The twins shared a look and laughed. A few seconds later, Hiccup has strapped the saddle and the prosthetic tailfin with a newly modified left stirrup onto Toothless. You guys ready? Hiccup asked Hiccup, Rada and Astrid, who all got on their dragons. Do you have to ask? Hiccup replied while Astrid and Rada nodded in agreement. The four of them and their dragons then took off into the skies. This is Burke. It snows 9 months of the year, and hails the other 3. Any food that grows here is tough and tasteless. The people that grow here are even more so. They flew high up in the air, zigzagging in perfect sync. The only upsides are the pets. The 4 teens and dragons then flew through the docks, where they were joined by Fishlegs and his Gronkle. While other places have ponies or parrots, we have. Soon Snotlout and his monstrous Nightmare and Roughnut and Toughnut and their hideous Zippleback joined the group. A new era has begun. Dragons.